Really good.
You got it?
Corny as fuck.
I need a new Facebook profile picture. Stay in bed. I really like the way this auditorium is set up because it feels like a middle school assembly. Like I'm about to give a presentation on drugs. Like I'm gonna come out here and talk about how drugs are bad. I had a really weird presentation on drugs when I was in middle school. All day long, the teachers were saying like, we're gonna have a presentation at the end of the day about methamphetamine. And I guess I just took it for granted that it was gonna be anti-methamphetamine. Completely not realizing the possibility it could be pro-methamphetamine. But the guy comes out, he's like, who here can tell me what methamphetamine does to you? And I'm like, that's a big question. It does a lot of stuff to you. Like, it makes you feel good? I don't think that was the right answer. And so it was dead silence in the whole room. And he's like, who here can tell me what methamphetamine does to you? I was like, oh, you asked it twice. Now I know the answer. But so no one answers. Like, I'll tell you what methamphetamine does to you. Imagine the best thing you've ever had in your life. And I was like, as a middle schooler, that's high pressure. Because if you start thinking about what's the best thing that's happened to you in middle school, you start getting depressed. I was like, oh, I don't know. Bananas are pretty good. But he was like, take the best thing that's ever happened to you and multiply it by 4. I was like, that's 4 bananas. And at that point, I was also like, that sounds awesome, right? Doesn't that sound awesome to you guys right now? It's 4 times better than the best thing you've ever done in your life. And that's the point where I started questioning, like, maybe this guy's pro-meth, and later on, some guy's gonna come out who's gonna be anti-meth, and they're gonna have a meth debate. They're gonna be like, meth is really bad for you. And the guy's gonna be like, no, meth's awesome. And the meth guy's probably gonna win. And I was like, man, meth sounds awesome. And he was pro-meth, it turned out. He took out a t-shirt can and he started shooting out meth to the audience. Right? And it was awful because it was syringes. So you got hit with a syringe, you got immediately high on meth, and then you were like, meth is awesome! And that's why I got hooked on meth. I'm just kidding, I don't actually do meth yet. I say yes, but who knows? Calm down. I used to do drugs in high school. I used to smoke pot. I stopped in my senior year. Not because I think I'm better than everybody, but I stopped in high school because I went to a party. I went to a really sketchy party. Probably the sketchiest of sketchy parties. And for those of you who don't know, I went to high school in Las Vegas. So that's the sketchiest of sketchy Las Vegas party, which is so illegal, it's actually legal. Because lawmakers had no idea to come up with laws for this stuff. Like I read that for the most states, flamethrowers are completely legal because no one thought to come up with laws for flamethrowers. It's like someone dropped the ball on that one. Like you should have come up with that. Anyways, that's what I mean when I say it was so illegal, it was technically legal. So I saw a group of people smoking pot, passing around a joint. And I get there, and I take my hit, I pass to the next guy. After he takes his hit, he looks at me and is like, hey man, have you ever done cocaine before? And whenever you meet a complete stranger, and the first thing they say is, have you done cocaine before? Everything else they're gonna say for the rest of the day is gonna be awesome. So the guy, he asked me if I did cocaine. I was like, no, I've never done cocaine. He's like, oh, so this is your first time. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, man, that joint was laced with cocaine. And I was like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Definitely didn't want to do that. So then I called my friends. I was freaking out because I've never done cocaine before, shockingly. And I called my friends. I'm like, hey, you need to come pick me up because I just did cocaine and I have no idea what's going to happen to me. So my sober friends come pick me up. They take me to a parking lot. I'm in the back seat. This is the place where Ronald Reagan had sex or whatever. But I'm in the back seat freaking out like, I'm not like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? And I was waiting for the cocaine high to come. I was waiting for it, and it never came, and I was really disappointed. Because that's the only situation where I could ever get a cocaine high without feeling completely guilty 3 weeks later because I don't put myself in situations. First of all, I never do cocaine, obviously. Second of all, I don't put myself in many situations where I accidentally do cocaine. This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing where you can say, oh, I accidentally did cocaine, and completely be honest about it. I accidentally do cocaine. I don't like go around sniffing white powders and like spend weeks high on chalk dust. And people were like, Angel has a drug problem. He's been snorting chalk dust for the past week. That's my story about drugs. I used to get a lot of stomach aches when I was growing up. So I went to the doctor, and the doctor did a lot of tests on me. They put cameras in really fun places. And the doctor was like, Angel, you have Crohn's disease. And I was like, what's Crohn's disease? And the doctor was like, what happens is your immune system causes inflammation. Your immune system attacks your large intestine, and that causes inflammations, and that's why you get stomach pains. And I was like, fuck. My immune system sounds like an idiot. My immune system, this is how I imagine the story. I imagine my immune system hanging out with some other cells. Like, that's a really funny story. Hey, who's that over there? It's like, that's the large intestine. It's like, let's go fuck it up. Don't do that, immune system. Now let's go fuck it up. My immune system is basically attacking completely innocent cells. My immune system is the LAPD. Oh no! Oh no! I said that. Ben's job likes it. Yeah. So they had to put me on treatment, obviously. They were like, Angel, what we're going to do is this medication is basically going to stop your immune system from working completely. Like, that sounds like an awful idea. Isn't that what AIDS is? You're going to give me AIDS to treat my Crohn's disease. Like, Crohn's disease is a pretty bad disease, I'm not going to lie. But AIDS is leagues out of where Crohn's disease even begins to be. AIDS is like when you tell someone you have AIDS, they start crying, they blame themselves, they curse God. When you tell people that you have Crohn's disease, they're like, oh, get over it. That would be like if I went to the doctor and was like, I keep having these chest pains. And they're like, let's just take your heart out. I was like, that would stop my chest pains. I asked out a girl the other day. No. Wait, do you think, is there any funny stories that start with, I asked out a girl, she said yes, now we're in love. I asked out a girl the other day, and I was like, hey, she was a really good friend of mine. I was like, hey, you're a really good friend of mine, maybe you and I should take things slow. And she was like, we should take things even slower. We should take things really slow. We should take things stagnant. And I was like, that is pretty slow. I was like, well, at least we can still be friends. She was like, let's take things slower. I was like, slower than stagnant, that's reverse. And she was like, Angel, I think we should take things reverse. That's how I fucked up that relationship. Have you guys read Amelia Bedelia? Yes. For those of you who don't know, Amelia Bedelia is those guys love it. For those of you who don't know, Amelia Bedelia is a series of children's books revolving around a woman who comes to America. She's a maid. She's a foreigner. She doesn't understand common English phrases that you and I take for granted. You know what I'm talking about. You're an English major. That you and I take for granted. And it's funny because she's foreign. And kids love that shit because kids are racist. But I love Amelia Bedelia because she's always like does these things that the homeowners don't really want her to do, and the homeowners come and she completely fucked up their whole house. Completely fucked up their whole house, and they're just like, oh, Amelia. And I feel like that definitely wouldn't happen in real life ever. I remember one particular situation where they're like, Amelia, I need you to dust the living room. And she's like, oh, I know what you mean. You want me to take dust and throw it all over the living room. Because that also means dust the living room. You're dusting it, right? And so like the homeowners come and they're like, oh, Amelia. But I feel in real life, they'd be like, what the fuck did you do, Amelia? Why would you think that's what I wanted you to do? You're a goddamn professional maid. You get paid for this shit, and you're throwing dust everywhere. Yeah, that makes sense. I want a book where Amelia Bedelia, shit gets out of hand fast for Amelia Bedelia. I want a book where Amelia Bedelia comes in, like maybe she's the assistant manager of her own maid service now. And her supervisor comes like, hey, you know, Todd's not really pulling his weight. He's not doing well. I think you need to fire Todd. She's like, you want me to fire Todd? She goes to buy a gun. I would call it Amelia Bedelia's first taste of blood. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Mexican. If you couldn't tell by my pale skin, my awkward facial hair, and my drug problem. But I'm completely Mexican, and I love Taco Bell, which is paradoxical in some ways. But I love Taco Bell, and all my friends, all my white friends, give me shit for loving Taco Bell. Because they're like, that's not authentic Mexican food. I was like, fuck you, that is authentic Mexican food. Because my parents were born in Mexico. They grew up in Mexico until they were about 20. And they were immune. They became citizens under Ronald Reagan. So, clap for Ronald Reagan. Woo! Anyways, so my parents would always tell stories like, oh man, I remember when I was growing up and I was in school and we would come home from school and my dad was on the grill. That would be my grandfather, for those of you who don't know. My dad was on the grill cooking up meats, cooking up vegetables, grilling up tortillas. He's like, Dad, what are you making? Crunchwrap Supremes! Crunchwrap Supremes for everybody! So for dinner, we're having bacon chalupas! And if you're really good, you can have some cinnamon twists. I'm just saying, that shit's totally authentic. How many of you are seniors? I don't know if a lot of you are seniors. You're a senior, fuck you, clap! That was very apathetic. Anyway, so I have a bunch of senior friends, and I was eating dinner at Burton Dining Hall with one of my senior friends, and I was like, hey man, how does it feel? You're about to enter the real world. And she took great offense to me saying, how are you going to enter the real world? She's like, fuck you! I work 30 hours a week downtown. I work 10 hours a week here. I do my comps and my schoolwork. That's another 15 hours. I easily work more than any homeowner in America. I also pay my own tuition and pay my own housing. How is that not the real world? And I was like, you have a meal plan. That's all for me.